Hello, good morning everyone. This is Dr. Shaima. We continue with the central nervous system. I'll be dealing with the motor tracts or the motor system. So, when you look at the motor system, just have a look at this picture. This picture basically shows the heading is read as efferent signals originating in cortical and brainstem areas determine the motor output signal from spinal cord that finally produces movement. So look at the picture carefully. You can see that the sensory inputs, the one which is marked to the green color, so that basically tells you the green color sensory input area marked with the green color arrow, which goes to the motor cortex through the spinal cord, actually talks about the sensory pathway which has already been done to you all. So you know that the muscles, the periphery, picks up the different sensations. It sends it to the spinal cord. From there, the next set of order neurons arises, and through the brain stem, it reaches the motor cortex. Now, from the motor cortex, so my concern here is telling you all or explaining you all what that red arrow indicates, which starts from the motor cortex, which passes through the brain stem, through the spinal cord, and you have the motor input which reaches the muscle, which brings about the effective movement. So that's what basically we are going to do in this chapter. So this is basically, so the sensory input is actually the efferent signal, and today what we are going to do in today's class, the motor system is basically the efferent signal which originates in the cortical and the brainstem areas, which is going to determine the muscle movements. Now the third slide tells us about the motor system, which has got three levels of organization. So basically you can put it as the motor system is broadly organized at three levels, and the three levels are the spinal cord, the brainstem, and the forebrain. Now the integration of the motor system at the level of the spinal cord is a major component of the regulation of motor functions. In the spinal cord, each segment has its own neural circuitry to control the motor movements, and this is what you call as the segmental organization. The organization of the motor control above the spinal cord segment, which is mainly done by the brainstem and the forebrain areas, is what we call as the suprasegmental organization of the motor system. So that's basically now the segmental organization is by the spinal cord, and the suprasegmental organization is by the brainstem and the forebrain area. So that's basically what this third slide tells you all. Now if you look at this picture, now each segment of the spinal cord has its input and output connections with various muscles in the body. Now from the muscles, input reaches the spinal cord. You can see that with a green figure here, the efferent neurons. From the muscles, how the input reaches the spinal cord via the muscle efferents, which can be 1A or 1B or any other kinds of efferent fibers. Now from the spinal cord, the output reaches the muscle via the motor neurons, the red line. Now between the efferent neurons and the motor neurons, there are many interneurons. That's actually not shown in the figure. We'll come across it as we move on with the chapter. Now in addition to the inputs from the efferents, the interneurons and the motor neurons, there are basically the descending fibers from various suprasegmental centers. Now the organization of the neuronal connections at every spinal cord segment is a unit of segmental organization. Now segmental organization includes muscles, efferent neurons, motor neurons, the motor neuron pool, and also the spinal interneurons. Now a little more closer look at the figure. If we begin from top, you can see the cerebral cortex, which has got a motor area and a sensory area, and the green color arrow, as I told you earlier, is talking to you all about the sensory tracts. Spinal cord, you can see the sensory tract which comes from the spinal cord through the brain stem, through the thalamus. It reaches the sensory area of the cerebral cortex, and the cerebral cortex becomes aware of the environmental stimulus your body is picking up. And you can see a small circuitry operating between the sensory area, the basal ganglia, thalamus, and thalamus is receiving inputs from the cerebellum, brainstem is also receiving inputs, and the green color line from the spinal cord to the sensory area are the ascending pathway. Now let's look at the orange line and the red line which we'll be doing today. From the motor area you can see a single red line which reaches the spinal cord, which is basically the corticospinal tract, which is the motor tract or the descending pathway. And you can see there is another orange line which comes from the motor area through the brain stem. It also reaches the spinal cord, which you call as the corticobulbar projection. Those are the motor tracts, and from there the coordination, the output signals from the spinal cord reaches the skeletal muscle, which takes care of the body movements. This is all basically giving you a general picture of the motor system. Now before we really move on to the motor tracts, you need to know what a motor neuron is. Now basically a motor neuron, or you call a neuron a motor neuron, so basically the neurons which are involved in the control of motor functions, you call as the motor neurons. Now these motor neurons, they are broadly divided into two categories. You have the upper motor neurons and the lower motor neurons. Basically upper motor neurons and lower motor neurons, they are asked as a 3 marker or a 5 marker. Now we need to know, I think this is already done, the segmental organization of the motor control, which I have already done. This figure, it tells the same thing. You have the motor neuron pool, the muscles, the motor neuron, the efferent, the dorsal root ganglion. I don't want to repeat this picture because this is done even while doing the sensory tracts. Now let's see what an upper motor neuron is. So you already know that the motor neurons, the neurons which takes care of the motor functions of the body, or the neurons which helps in the muscular movements, we have grouped them or divided them into two, the upper motor neuron and the lower motor neuron. Now the upper motor neurons basically are the neurons which are derived from the motor areas of the brain, the motor cortex, the brain stem, motor nuclei, etc. Now the neurons or the motor neurons which are derived from the motor cortex, brain stem, motor nuclei, etc., they terminate either directly or indirectly. Indirectly means through the interneurons on the lower motor neurons in the spinal cord. I will be focusing a picture for you all, it will become more clear. Yeah, just have a look at this picture. You can see the extent of upper motor neuron. Upper motor neuron is what you see in yellow color. They are originating from the higher brain, the forebrain, the brain stem, and they extend till the spinal cord. Now from the spinal cord, or the specifically to tell from the anterior horn cells to the skeletal muscle, the neurons, the motor neurons, we call them as the lower motor neurons. So we just come back to this slide after seeing the picture, so there's a better understanding for you all. The upper motor neurons are basically the neurons, the motor neurons which are derived from the motor areas of the brain. There are so many motor areas of the brain, like motor cortex, the brain stem, motor nuclei, etc. And these upper motor neurons, they terminate directly on the spinal cord, or they terminate indirectly on the spinal cord through interneurons. Now the axons of these neurons, they basically form the descending pathways, which we are going to do in this class. Now the examples of the descending pathways are, you have the corticospinal tracts, the rubrospinal tracts, the vestibulospinal tracts, and the reticulospinal tracts. All these tracts you will be studying with picture really in detail. Now let's see the lower motor neuron. If you are able to recollect the figure, the lower motor neuron is marked in red color. Now the low motor neurons or the elements, they originate in the anterior horn of the spinal cord or in the cranial nerve motor nuclei. They innervate various skeletal muscles. Now the cell bodies of the low motor neurons are located in the ventral horn of the spinal gray matter or the anterior horn cells and also the brain stem nuclei. Now some of the fibers in the descending pathway, they terminate directly on the motor neurons. But most of the fibers, they terminate through interneurons, which in turn will project to the motor neuron. Now the low motor neurons are again divided into two. You have the alpha motor neurons and the gamma motor neurons. Now let's see in detail what an alpha motor neuron is and what a gamma motor neuron is. So basically an alpha motor neuron, they constitute the final common path of motor output signals from the central nervous system. So I repeat the sentence, the alpha motor neurons, they basically constitute the, I think I would just like to go back a little to make this more clear for you all. I think let's just have a look at this figure. Please look at the red line, which is the lower motor neurons. Lower motor neurons, I told you, they originate in the anterior horn of the spinal cord, or it can be in the cranial nerve motor nuclei, and they innervate various skeletal muscles. Now the cell bodies of these motor neurons are located in the ventral horns of the spinal gray matter or the anterior horn cells and the brain stem nuclei. Though some of the fibers in the descending pathways terminate directly on the motor neurons, most of the fibers will terminate through interneurons. And the lower motor neurons can be either an alpha motor neuron or a gamma motor neuron. So this red line, what you are seeing from the anterior horn cell to the skeletal muscle which they are innervating, can either be an alpha motor neuron or a gamma motor neuron. Now let's see what an alpha motor neuron is, what a gamma motor neuron is. Now this alpha motor neuron, they basically consists of the final common path from the CNS, for the motor output signals. Now that's a route by which the central neural activity influences the skeletal muscle. Now these alpha motor neurons innervate extrafusal muscle fibers, which are basically responsible for the generation of force in a muscle movement. Now one alpha motor neuron innervates to around 10 to 1000 muscle fibers depending on which muscle it is innervating. So here in the picture you can see an alpha motor neuron and a gamma motor neuron, and I told you that the alpha, so you can see the extrafusal muscle fibers here. You know that the alpha motor neurons basically innervate the extrafusal muscle fibers. Now let's see what a gamma motor neuron is. You can see a gamma motor neuron is marked in the figure here. The gamma motor neurons innervate the intrafusal muscle fibers. You can see it's marked in the figure, the central part, the muscle spindle or the intrafusal muscle fiber. And they basically constitute 30% of the fibers, which again arise from the anterior horn cells. They do not contribute to the total force generated in the muscle, whereas you know that the alpha motor neurons are basically working to create force in a skeletal muscle contraction. So now what does this gamma motor neuron do? They don't create any force generation, they don't do, but they modulate the sensitivity of the muscle spindle and thereby regulate the muscle the muscle length and the muscle tone. Now the gamma motor neurons with the intrafusal muscle fibers, together we call them as the fusi motor system. I repeat it, the gamma motor neurons plus the intrafusal muscle fibers which they innervate, we call them together as a fusi-motor system. Now the gamma motor neurons do not receive inputs from sensory efferents. Rather, descending pathways normally influence them. So the supraspinal motor centers basically regulate the muscle tone mainly by altering the discharge of impulses or activity in the gamma motor neurons. Now what do you mean by a motor unit? See, all these terms, as we go forward with the chapter, we will be using these terms more frequently. Now what you mean by a motor unit is, a motor unit is composed of 5 parts. You have a motor neuron. Now there is an axon for it. Third, there are branches of axon. Fourth is you come to the neuromuscular junction at the distal end of each axon branch. And fifth, you have all of the extrafusal muscle fibers which are innervated by that single motor neuron. Now when a motor neuron generates an action potential, all of its muscle fibers or all the muscle fibers which it innervates gets activated. So that's what I mean by a motor unit. A motor unit is a very often asked 3-marker for you all. I think this is done. So now basically we go to the descending pathways. Now when I talk about descending pathway can be asked as a 10-marker for you all. And now sections of it can come as a 5-marker and a 3-marker for you all. So this is basically a very important chapter when the university exam point of view is considered. Now if you look at the descending pathway, the descending pathways are basically classified into the pyramidal tracts and the extrapyramidal tracts. Now what do you mean by pyramidal tracts? Now the descending tracts are basically the motor pathways. They start from the motor cortex through the spinal cord, they innervate the muscles. From the motor cortex to the spinal cord, we call the neurons as the upper motor neurons. From the spinal cord to the skeletal muscles they innervate, we call them as the lower motor neurons. Now the descending pathway, which is divided as the the pyramidal tract and the extrapyramidal tract. Descending tracts that pass through the pyramid in the medulla, we call it as the pyramidal tract, and the descending pathways which do not pass through the pyramid in the medulla, we refer to them as the extrapyramidal tract. Now pyramidal tract, the name is very synonymous with the name of the tract, corticospinal tract, and extrapyramidal tracts include the reticulospinal tract, the vestibulospinal tract, the rubrospinal tract and the tectospinal tracts. All these tracts we will be doing it in detail. Now all the fibers of the corticospinal tract do not pass through the pyramid. Especially most of the fibers in the anterior corticospinal tract bypass the pyramid. That's a very important point you need to know. You'll observe it when I show you all the figure of the corticospinal tract. This classification of the pyramidal versus this extrapyramidal pathways is basically physiologically incorrect, isn't it? Initially how we classified was all the tracts, whatever fibers which passes through the pyramid in the medulla was termed as pyramidal tract, and earlier they thought corticospinal tract was a pyramidal tract. And the other tracts like the reticulospinal, vestibulospinal, rubrospinal and the tectospinal were extrapyramidal tract, and they did not pass through the medulla, pyramid of the medulla. But later on they found that all of the fibers of the corticospinal tract is not passing through the pyramid, especially majority of the fibers of the anterior corticospinal tract is basically bypassing the pyramid. That means where you sum down is this classification of pyramidal versus extrapyramidal tract classification is physiologically incorrect. So, so then the next question comes, what is the physiologically correct classification of the descending pathways? So better we would follow the division of the lateral system and the medial system pathways. So the motor tracts or the descending tracts are ideally classified as the lateral system pathways and the medial system pathways. That is basically depending upon from the motor cortex when they are passing down through the to the spinal cord, then to the muscle. The fibers, when they occupy the lateral part, we call them as the lateral system pathway, and the fibers occurring which are present at the medial side, we call them as the medial system pathway. Now the classification is based on the termination of the descending pathways on the motor neurons in the spinal cord and the functions of the pathways, basically not just the position of the fibers, but also exactly where at what position the fibers are terminating, and also based on the functions of the pathways. So you have the lateral system pathway and the medial system pathway. Now let's see in detail the lateral system pathways. They descend down in the lateral column of the spinal cord, and they are divided into two. You have the lateral corticospinal tract and the rubrospinal tract. Now basically all the fibers of these two tracts, the lateral corticospinal tract and the rubrospinal tract, are placed in the lateral funiculus in the spinal cord, and they terminate on the motor neurons that are placed laterally in the ventral horn of the spinal cord. And what are the functions of these two tracts, the lateral corticospinal tract and the rubrospinal tract? They basically regulate the skilled movements, anything. It can be writing, drawing, carpentry, playing any instruments, anything. And also the voluntary movements when you want to clean a board, when you anything, any cleaning, whatever which is under your voluntary control. That's basically controlled by the lateral corticospinal tract and the rubrospinal tract. So you can see that in the figure, the lateral corticospinal tract and the rubrospinal tract. So both of them, they are placed at the lateral funiculus in the spinal cord. You can see that in the picture, the red circle here, that's basically the lateral funiculus. So both the lateral corticospinal tract and the rubrospinal tract. Now next comes the medial system pathways. So the descending tracts were divided into the lateral system pathway, which we have already finished, which included the lateral corticospinal tract and the rubrospinal tract. Next comes the medial system pathways. Now medial system pathway, what you mean is the fibers, when they descend down from the motor cortex, they are descending down in the medial and the anterior columns of the spinal cord, and the pathways are they are around 5. You have the reticulospinal tract, the vestibulospinal tract, tectospinal tract, anterior corticospinal tract, and also the interstitiospinal tract. Now basically the medial system pathways, the fibers are placed in the medial and the anterior funiculi in the spinal cord. You can see that there. The fibers are placed in the medial and the anterior funiculus, whereas the lateral system pathway, the fibers were placed at the lateral funiculus of the spinal cord. So here it is the medial or the anterior funiculus. Now, and these fibers of the medial system pathway, they terminate on the motor neurons that are placed medially in the ventral horn, that's on the medial group of motor neurons, and the functions of the medial system pathways, all these tracts, the reticulospinal tract, the vestibulospinal, tecto, anterior corticospinal, interstitiospinal tract, all of them, their function is to maintain the posture or regulation of posture is the functions of the medial system pathway, whereas the lateral system pathway, the function was the regulation of skilled movements and also the voluntary movements. Please be very clear with the functions of each tract. So now basically we go to the corticospinal tract. The corticospinal tracts are divided into two groups, the lateral corticospinal tract and the anterior corticospinal tract. The lateral corticospinal tract, that's the most important descending pathway which controls the skilled voluntary movements And the second one is the anterior corticospinal tract, or we even call it as the ventral corticospinal tract, and that's involved in the control of the posture. So this is the picture. I think I would continue with the corticospinal tract, the detailed in tomorrow's class, where so tomorrow's class basically I'll be doing all these tracks. This figure needs to be explained. So I think today I'll wind up here with the class. I would want you all to be thorough with whatever we have done today, so that once that base is very clear, understanding the all the different tracks. We are going to discuss around 5 tracks under the medial system pathway and 2 tracks under the lateral system pathway. So for a better understanding of the tract, I would do the tracks in the next class, and I want you all to have make your own notes and be very thorough with whatever around 20-25 slides which I have done in today's class. So tomorrow we'll be continuing with the class. Thanks for listening. Please make sure that you all make notes ready for the class. Thank you for listening.